Hello, everyone. I am Eric Knuckles, and this is going to be my project on the ethics of climate change. So, just kind of a brief overview on climate change here. Climate change is just going to be the natural process in which the environment is changing, mainly through temperature. An example of this is just going to be how when the temperature is decreasing, it led to events such as the Ice Age. But more nowadays, we're seeing the temperature increasing. This is going to be due to human contributions of greenhouse gases. These greenhouse gases are just going to be chemicals such as carbon dioxide uh, that overall just kind of trap the heat on Earth because it's supposed to bounce off the Earth back in space. But because of these greenhouse gases, it's actually trapping it on Earth to where it's not being able to be expelled. And because of this, it's raising the Earth's temperature even more than it should be. On the right here, I kind of have an example of how these carbon dioxide emissions actually affect the atmosphere here and temperature as well. The red line, of course, is the worst case scenario. The green is the best case scenario, and if for the carbon emissions. So really, overall, here we're going to be talking about how it's everyone's everyone's overall responsibility to hold each other accountable for the actions we all take for combating climate change because it's all our ethical and moral responsibilities to do so. So we want to make sure that we're all playing our part here correctly and we have the correct structure in place so we can leave a better environment behind for future generations. So the government should be holding businesses accountable for their carbon footprint. The government could do this just by enforcing policies already in place or putting new policies in place to kind of build that structure for businesses to work off of. So I mean, the most powerful arsenal that tool they're going to have in our arsenal is going to be that they can set fees or taxes for businesses based on the carbon emissions that they release into the atmosphere. Also, the government could start setting statewide standards for renewable energy production, if that's changing policies in place or putting new policies in place for cleaner energy that businesses could use, such as solar energy or wind energy, then it's really going to be something that benefits everyone over time. Because I mean, businesses are going to save money. It's going to reduce their carbon footprint. It's going to help the environment. To me, it's a ethical no-brainer, and really, it's should be our moral responsibility to do stuff like this to make sure that we're kind of cleaning up the environment. And lastly, the government could just raise taxes for businesses, pay for research for climate change, if nothing else. I mean, that way we have a panel together that's doing research on everything, and that way they can make recommendations to the higher authorities. So, I mean, we can take actions to combat climate change. Here we're going to be talking about how businesses can simply hold themselves accountable. Uh, I mean, really the main thing they can do is create a climate action plan, which most ethical businesses should have in the first place if they do care about the environment. I mean, in this action plan, it's going to state things just as their current carbon emissions, where they want to be in the future, their emission reduction targets, and just kind of everything in between there. Just kind of a report for where their carbon emissions are coming from, and just by seeing this, going to be able to take action based off this, such as just switching out machinery with more efficient, cleaner machinery that will reduce this carbon emission over time here. And by doing this, they'll be able to hit that target easily and earn a reputation of being a green company. Another thing they can do as well, though, is that they can also support the politics that combat climate change. So kind of just being that a role model for other businesses to follow, they can kind of set that norm for businesses so they can, well, like I said, they can follow and uh, kind of base their business off their the other business there. All right, and quickly here too, just on the right, there is a graph that kind of shows uh, just how climate change can be affected through policies here that combat climate change. So the gray one towards the top is just if there's no policies in place, we see a high increase in the temperature, if that's the case. And we gradually see it go down based on the policies that we do put in place to combat climate change. And that again is it's not just business policy; it's the government policies as well. So it really just shows why it should be a really a no-brainer for that it's our moral and ethical duty to help the environment. Because just looking at these numbers, if we do nothing, then we're obviously going to leave the world in a worse state than how we came into it, which should be going against our morals and our ethical duty. So moving on to the next slide here. Um, I mean, we've kind of talked about how a business can kind of hold themselves to a higher example compared to other businesses out there. And just by doing so, hopefully other businesses out there kind of reflect on their policies based on this authority in this case and change their policies accordingly. So this next slide, we're going to be talking about how separate businesses can hold each other accountable. So this can really just simply be done by business decide not to work with another business if that's just not uh, collecting its products from it, or if it's just not getting its materials from it, its labor, what have you. But just overall not working with this business if they don't have a good policy regarding climate change. And just by doing that, they're going to set that example of, hey, we're not going to work with this company if they're not going to take the concerns of climate change seriously. And of course, that's going to undercut the company's profit and kind of push them to look at their own policies and hopefully in itself change if they hope to succeed in the future. And other businesses kind of looking from the outside in, seeing actions like this happening, they're going to want to change their own policies before something like this happens to them. So if we kind of held our businesses to higher standards such as this, I mean, if we could be that ethical foundation in which other businesses can want to be a reflection of. So from here, we're going to be talking about just really the public's accountability to themselves. I mean, the public can really just do this by keeping themselves well informed on policies for climate change and just the science that goes behind it. And just by doing this, they're going to be able to make better informed decisions when it comes to voting on policies for climate change, as well as just everyday things like buying a new car. You're going to keep in mind just the carbon footprint that you're going to be producing with the type of car that you drive. So you might get something that's a little bit greener for the environment. And also with uh, this new knowledge that you have, you'll be able to pass this on to others. And because of this, you'll be able to just share that information. And if they believe it the same way you do or not, that's totally up to them. But you're doing your ethical duty and moral duty just by sharing that information with others to make sure that they are in the loop for what's going on and just for the facts behind the matter of climate change. And kind of tying into this here too, the public does also have an accountability for uh, well, really holding the businesses accountable out there. So if they see a business out there that is, well, just isn't green, and just by recognizing this, they can do things such as boycotting the business to kind of affect their underlying profits that the business themselves are producing. And if they don't see that as being enough, then they can actually take it to a whole new level and actually protest against the business. And by really just by doing this, people are going to see what's going on with that business, and it's really going to affect their underlying dollar amount at that point. And it's going to kind of force the business themselves to change policies to uh, be greener if they ever hope to get their clientele back. So just kind of to wrap this all up here, then, I mean, overall, we should be holding ourselves accountable for the actions that we're taking that contribute towards climate change. If it's the public code holding the businesses accountable for what they do, or the government holding the public accountable, I mean, however you want to say it, it's fine. We just need to hold each other accountable for our actions, and just by doing this, just build a new structure in which we can consider our actions and how it affects the environment before we just go out and do something. I mean, I don't mean to be a broken record. I know I've said it a few times, but we just overall want to leave a better environment for future generations here and give them the same opportunities that we have. So, I mean, it's kind of our moral obligation to do so. All right, so here are all the references I used when it came to my paper as well as this presentation here. All right, and lastly, I just had some questions for our discussion here to kind of kickstart everything. So first of all, just who has the biggest ethical role to play to save the environment? For example, the government, businesses, the public. Why? Second question is considering the effects we have on the environment outside of our moral responsibility. Why or why not? Number three, do we have any other insights on how these entities can hold each other accountable for the effect they have on the climate? So just kind of building upon what we talked about, kind of more of a fun discussion. Just how can they play a role to save the environment? And I mean, if you can think of more for how it's their ethical duties, I would definitely love to hear that. And that's all I got. Thank you so much for taking the time, and have a great day.